The first thing you need to know about my grandmother is that she once paid a waitress to quit her job because the woman's ponytail was too cheerful. She walked into a diner in Back Bay, ordered a cup of Earl Grey, and decided the 20-year-old serving her was smiling too much. Too bright. Too much hope in her eyes. So she wrote a check for $10,000, slid it across the Formica table, and said, "Take this. Go back to college. Never serve tea again." The waitress cashed it. Who wouldn't? She paid off her loans and became a dental hygienist in Worcester. My grandmother tells that story at dinner parties as proof of her generosity. That's the thing about Evelyn Cabot. She doesn't destroy people. She saves them. With strings attached. With conditions. With a grip so tight you don't realize you're being strangled until you're already gasping. So when she walked into May's diner on a rainy Tuesday afternoon and saw me behind the counter, me, her granddaughter, the one who was supposed to be in Europe or at a hedge fund or anywhere but here, she didn't scream. She didn't cry. She ordered a coffee, black, no sugar, and waited for me to bring it to her. I had ketchup on my apron. Coffee stains on my sleeves. My hair was falling out of a ponytail I'd thrown together at 4 a.m. when my alarm didn't go off. I looked exactly like what I was, a 24-year-old waitress who hadn't slept in 2 years and hadn't spoken to her family in 4. She wrapped her manicured fingers around the chipped ceramic mug. And then she asked it. "Wasn't $400,000 enough for you to stay gone?" The diner didn't stop. The fry cook kept frying. The radio kept playing. The old man in the corner kept stirring his split pea soup. But for me, the world tilted sideways. $400,000. I hadn't seen a dime of it. For years earlier, I was the Cabot family's golden girl. My name is Margot Cabot. Yes, those Cabots. The Boston ones. The ones with the townhouse on Beacon Street and the summer compound in Kennebunkport and the trust fund that was set up before I could walk. My father, Harrison Cabot, was the heir apparent to Cabot Investment Group. My mother, Lillian, was a former debutante who had turned hosting charity galas into an art form. I had a brother, Whit, who was 2 years older and twice as charming. He could convince anyone of anything. Teachers, coaches, investors, women. He once talked a police officer out of a speeding ticket by explaining the physics of momentum in such excruciating detail that the cop just walked away. Whit was supposed to take over the family business. I was supposed to marry well and produce heirs. That was the deal. The unspoken contract of being a Cabot woman. You smile. You wear the right dresses. You attend the right schools. And eventually, you marry a man your grandmother approves of and you disappear into a life of luncheons and charity boards and quiet desperation. The problem was, I didn't want any of it. I wanted to cook. Not as a hobby. Not as a cute little skill to show off at dinner parties. I wanted to stand in a hot kitchen and make food that made people feel something. I wanted flour under my fingernails and burns on my forearms. I wanted to build a restaurant from nothing and serve dishes I'd created myself. My grandmother found this charmingly pedestrian. My mother called it a phase. My father didn't call it anything, because my father didn't notice things that didn't affect his stock portfolio. Only Whit understood. He used to sneak into the kitchen late at night while I was experimenting with recipes. He'd sit on the counter, steal whatever I was making, and tell me I was going to be the next Julia Child. "You're too good for this family," he said once, his mouth full of my failed attempt at croissants. "You know that, right? I'm a Cabot." "No. You're Margot." "That's different. That's better." He was wrong. I wasn't better. I was just stupid enough to believe the family would let me go. The summer I turned 20, I fell in love. His name was Leo. Leo Marchetti. He was a sous chef at a restaurant in the North End where I'd been staging for the summer. His grandfather had come over from Sicily with nothing but a tomato knife and a recipe for marinara. Leo had been cooking since he was 12. He could break down a whole tuna in under 4 minutes and he cried the first time he tasted my risotto. It's perfect, he said, his eyes wet. You're perfect. Marry me. I laughed. We'd been dating for 3 weeks. I'm serious, he said. Run away with me. Open a restaurant. We'll call it something stupid like Margot and Leo's, and we'll fight about the menu, and we'll make the best damn pasta Boston has ever tasted. Margot and Leo's is a terrible name. Fine. Leo and Margot's. Worse. The Hungry Idiots. That's the one. We kissed. I burned the risotto. We ordered pizza and planned our imaginary restaurant until 3 in the morning. 3 months later, I told my family about him. The dinner was at the Beacon Street townhouse. My grandmother was there. My parents. Wit. Aunts, uncles, cousins. 20 people around a mahogany table that had belonged to my great-great-grandfather. I stood up between the duck confit and the creme brulee and I said, I'm moving to New York. I've been accepted at the Culinary Institute. And I'm going with someone. The silence was absolute. My grandmother set down her fork. Who? His name is Leo Marchetti. He's a chef. We're going to open a restaurant together someday. A chef. She said the word like it was a disease. Yes. Marchetti. She said the name like it was evidence in a trial. Yes. She looked at my father. My father looked at his wine glass. My mother dabbed her mouth with her napkin and said nothing. Wit caught my eye from across the table and gave me the smallest nod. The smallest smile. Go. Do it. Don't look back. My grandmother turned to me. You will not see this boy again. You will not attend culinary school. You will not throw away your future to play in a kitchen like common help. Grandmother. We have given you everything. Education. Opportunity. A name that opens doors. And you want to repay us by becoming a cook. A chef. A servant. In an apron. Sweating over a stove for people who will never know your last name. She stood up. This conversation is over. No. My voice came out stronger than I felt. It's not over. This is my life. Not yours. Not the family's. Mine. And I'm going. The room was so still I could hear the grandfather clock ticking in the hallway. Then my grandmother smiled. It was the smile of someone who'd been playing chess for 70 years and had just spotted the move that would end the game. Fine, she said. Go. But understand this, you go without us. No trust fund. No inheritance. No safety net. When you fail, and you will fail, don't come crawling back expecting to be rescued. I won't fail. We'll see. She picked up her fork and resumed eating her duck confit like nothing had happened. I left the table. I left the house. I didn't look back. The next morning, my grandmother's lawyer called. A settlement, he explained, his voice smooth and practiced, to facilitate your transition to independence. Mrs. Cabot wishes to ensure you have adequate resources to pursue your culinary aspirations. Adequate resources. Translation: here's money to go away and never embarrass us again. $400,000, the lawyer continued. Wired to your account upon signing the agreement. What agreement? The agreement stating you will not contact any member of the Cabot family for a period of not less than 10 years. Nor will you use the Cabot name in any business venture. Nor will you speak publicly about the family or its affairs. I almost laughed. They were paying me to disappear. Where do I sign? I was 20 years old. I was in love. I had a plan. $400,000 was more money than I'd ever need. Leo and I could open our restaurant. We could build something real, something ours, something that didn't owe anything to anyone with the last name Cabot. I signed the papers that afternoon. The money never arrived. I called the lawyer. He didn't return my messages. I called my father. His assistant said he was in a meeting. I called my mother. She said she didn't know anything about any money, and maybe I should just come home and apologize to my grandmother and this could all be forgotten. I called Whit. His phone went straight to voicemail. 3 days later, I got a text from an unknown number. The money was a test. You failed. Don't contact this family again. I never found out who sent it. My grandmother? My father? One of their lawyers? It didn't matter. The message was clear, I had been cut loose with nothing. Leo took my hand and said, "We don't need their money. We'll figure it out." So we figured it out. We moved to New York. I started at the Culinary Institute. Leo got a job at a French restaurant in Brooklyn. We lived in a studio apartment the size of my old walk-in closet. The radiator hissed all winter. The ceiling leaked when it rained. We had one pot, one pan, and a mattress on the floor. I was happier than I'd ever been in my life. 2 years later, I graduated top of my class. 3 years later, Leo and I had saved enough to put a down payment on a tiny space in Queens. We painted the walls ourselves. Built the tables ourselves. The sign outside said "The Hungry Idiots" in neon pink letters. We opened on a Tuesday. 3 people came. One of them was a food critic from the Village Voice. The next week, we had a line around the block. The next year, we had a Michelin star. And the year after that, Leo got sick. Pancreatic cancer. Stage 4. Inoperable. The doctors gave him 6 months. He lasted 4. The medical bills ate everything. The restaurant. The savings. The future we'd built. I sold The Hungry Idiots for less than it was worth because I needed the money fast. I paid off what I could. I held Leo's hand while he faded. I planned a funeral with money I didn't have. After it was over, I got in my car and drove. No destination. No plan. I just needed to be somewhere that didn't smell like hospital antiseptic and grief. I ended up in Boston. Not Beacon Hill. Not the townhouse. A rundown apartment in Somerville with bars on the windows and a landlord who didn't ask questions. I got a job at May's Diner because May was the only person who'd hire a woman with a Michelin star on her resume who couldn't explain why she'd walked away from it all. May didn't ask. She just handed me an apron and said, "Shift starts at 5. Don't be late." I'd been there for 4 months when my grandmother walked in. 4 months of pouring coffee and scraping plates and pretending I didn't wake up every morning wishing I'd died instead of Leo. 4 months of avoiding the North End, the Back Bay, anywhere I might run into a Cabot. 4 months of believing I'd hit rock bottom and the only direction left was sideways. Then Evelyn Cabot sat in my section, ordered black coffee, and asked me if $400,000 wasn't enough to keep me away. I set down the coffee pot. My hands were steady. That surprised me. My hands hadn't been steady in a year. "What $400,000? I asked. Her expression flickered. Just for a moment. Just for a fraction of a second. But I saw it. Something I'd never seen on my grandmother's face before. Confusion. "Your settlement," she said. "When you left. The money was wired to your account." "No. It wasn't. I have the transfer confirmation." "Then someone faked it. Because I never got a cent." She stared at me. I stared back. The fry cook called out that my order was up. The old man needed more split pea soup. The world kept spinning. But something had shifted in my grandmother's eyes. Something cold and calculating and, for the first time in my life, aimed at someone who wasn't me. "Get in the car," she said. "I have a shift. I'll buy the diner. You can't just." "Margot." She stood up. She was shorter than me. She'd always been shorter than me. But she'd never looked it until now. "Get in the car. We have a thief to catch." I untied my apron. I got in the car. And for the first time in 4 years, I went home. The townhouse hadn't changed. Same mahogany table. Same grandfather clock. Same portraits of dead Cabot staring down from the walls like they were judging my shoes. I hadn't set foot in this house in 4 years. The last time I'd been here, I'd announced I was leaving to become a chef, and my grandmother had told me I was throwing away my future. Now I was back, wearing a stained waitress uniform, reeking of diner coffee, sitting in a chair that cost more than my monthly rent. My grandmother sat across from me. She hadn't offered me tea. "The transfer," she said. "Tell me exactly what happened." I told her. The phone call from the lawyer. The papers I signed. The money that never arrived. The text message telling me I'd failed a test. Her face didn't move. My grandmother's face never moved. It was one of her defining features, like the pearls she wore to breakfast and the way she said, "Interesting," when she meant, "I'm planning your destruction." Who was the lawyer? I don't remember his name. He said he worked for you. I have 6 lawyers. Describe him. Older. Smooth voice. Called me Miss Cabot, like he was sucking on a mint. She picked up her phone and dialed without looking at the keypad. "Charles. Come to the house. Now." Charles, it turned out, was the head of her legal team. He arrived 12 minutes later, slightly out of breath, carrying a leather briefcase and an expression of polite terror. "The settlement agreement," my grandmother said. "4 years ago. For Margot." "Who handled it?" Charles blinked. "Settlement?" "The $400,000 I authorized for my granddaughter's transition to independence." "Who handled it?" Charles opened his briefcase. Shuffled through papers. His forehead grew shiny with sweat. "Mrs. Cabot, I don't have any record of that transfer." "Then find it." "I can check the archives, but..." "Now, Charles." He checked the archives. He made phone calls. He pulled files. An hour later, he stood in front of my grandmother with the expression of a man who'd just discovered a bomb in his own basement. "The transfer was processed," he said, his voice tight. "The authorization is here. Signed by you, Mrs. Cabot. The funds were moved from the family account on July 12, 4 years ago." "To Margot's account?" "No." He swallowed. "To a separate escrow account. One that was closed 6 months later." "By whom?" "The account was in the name of Harrison Cabot. My father." The room went very, very quiet. My grandmother's expression didn't change. But her hands, her perfectly manicured, diamond-ringed hands, went still on the armrests of her chair. "Harrison," she repeated. According to the records, Mr. Cabot was listed as the escrow agent. He was authorized to disburse the funds. Charles paused. "The funds were disbursed, Mrs. Cabot. But not to Miss Cabot's account. They were transferred to an investment vehicle registered in the Cayman Islands. My father had stolen my money. The $400,000 that was supposed to be my bribe to disappear, my payment for never embarrassing the family again, my father had taken it and stashed it offshore." I started laughing. I couldn't help it. 4 years of struggle. 4 years of ramen and radiator hiss and Leo's medical bills. 4 years of believing I'd failed some imaginary test. And the whole time, my father had pocketed the cash like it was spare change in the sofa cushions. "This is not funny," my grandmother said. "It's a little funny. Your father stole from you. To be fair, he was stealing money you were using to bribe me to disappear. Which is also theft, technically. Just more polite." She gave me a look that had made senators apologize and CEOs resign. I stopped laughing. "Where is my son now?" she asked Charles. "At the office, I believe. There's a board meeting this afternoon. Call him. Tell him to come home immediately. Do not tell him why." Yes, Mrs. Cabot. Charles practically ran out of the room. My grandmother turned to me. For a long moment, she just looked at me. I couldn't read her expression. I'd never been able to read her expression. She was like a painting in a museum, beautiful, cold, and completely impenetrable. I didn't send that text message, she said finally. What? The one telling you the money was a test. The one telling you not to contact the family. Her jaw tightened. I didn't send it. Someone wanted you to think I had. Someone wanted you to blame me. Someone? You mean my father. I mean someone. She stood up. Go upstairs. Take a shower. There are clothes in your old room. When Harrison arrives, I want you present. Why? Because you've been silent for 4 years. I think it's time you spoke. My old room was exactly as I'd left it. The same canopy bed. The same bookshelves full of cookbooks I'd hidden inside dust jackets of appropriate literature. The same window seat where I'd spent hours dreaming about menus and restaurants and a life that felt like mine. I showered in the bathroom attached to my room. The water pressure was perfect. The towels were thick and white and smelled like lavender. I hadn't used a towel that wasn't threadbare in 2 years. When I came out, there were clothes laid on the bed. Not my old clothes, those were long gone. New clothes. Simple. Black pants, white blouse. My size. My grandmother must have had someone bring them. I put them on. Looked at myself in the mirror. I looked older. Tired. There were lines around my eyes that hadn't been there 4 years ago. But there was something else, too. Something harder. Something that had survived Leo's death and medical debt and 4 months of serving coffee to strangers who didn't know I'd once run a Michelin-starred kitchen. I looked like someone who had nothing left to lose. Downstairs, I heard the front door open. Mother? What's so urgent? I was in the middle of my father's voice. Harrison Cabot. The man who taught me how to ride a bike and how to balance a checkbook and how to smile at people I despised. The man who'd never once asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up, because he'd already decided. He walked into the sitting room and saw me. He stopped. Margot. Hello, Dad. You look, he hesitated. He'd been about to say, terrible. I could see it in his eyes. The dark circles. The cheap haircut. The fact that I'd lost weight I couldn't afford to lose. You look well. I look like I've been working in a diner for 4 months and sleeping in an apartment with bars on the windows. But thank you for lying. It's very on brand. His expression flickered. He turned to my grandmother. What's going on? Sit down, Harrison. I have a board meeting. Sit down. He sat. My grandmother didn't raise her voice. She didn't have to. She'd spent 75 years perfecting the art of making powerful men feel small. My father, despite being her son, was no exception. 4 years ago, she said, I authorized a settlement for your daughter. $400,000, to be paid from the family account. Do you remember this? I remember you telling me about it. Do you remember anything else? I remember thinking it was a mistake. He glanced at me. No offense, Margot, but you'd made your choice. You wanted to leave the family. Why should the family pay for it? So you stopped the payment. I didn't stop anything. I expressed my opinion and you ignored me, as usual. My grandmother picked up a folder from the table beside her. The folder Charles had left. The funds were moved to an escrow account. An account in your name. The money was supposed to go to Margot. It went to the Cayman Islands instead. My father's face went very still. I didn't. Harrison. My grandmother's voice could have frozen the Charles River. Do not lie to me. I have the records. I have the signatures. I have a very detailed paper trail that leads directly from my authorization to your offshore account. The only question is whether I send it to the Attorney General's office or whether you explain yourself right now." The silence stretched. My father looked at me. I looked back. I'd spent my whole childhood trying to earn this man's attention, his approval, his love. Now I just felt tired. "It wasn't about the money," he said finally. "What was it about?" "About her." He pointed at me. "She wanted to leave. She wanted to be a cook. She was throwing away everything this family had built. And you were going to reward her for it. So you stole from your own daughter." I taught her a lesson. She needed to understand that actions have consequences. That you can't just walk away from your responsibilities and expect a handout. A handout. My voice came out steadier than I expected. "You mean the money that was specifically designated for me? The money I signed a legal agreement to receive? That handout? You signed away your right to be part of this family. I signed what your lawyer told me to sign. And then you took the money and hid it. That's not a lesson, Dad. That's theft." He stood up. His face was red. "I don't have to listen to this. You don't know what it takes to run this family. The sacrifices I've made. The things I've done to protect our name." "What else?" The question came from my grandmother. Quiet. Dangerous. "What else have you done to protect the name, Harrison?" My father's mouth opened. Closed. Because there was something. We could all see it. Something else behind his eyes. "What did you do?" I asked. He didn't answer. My grandmother picked up her phone. "Charles. Come back inside. And bring the files from the Cabot Investment Group internal audit." "Yes. All of them." My father went pale. "Mother, that's confidential. This family is confidential. This house is confidential. Your daughter's life is confidential. The audit is not." Charles returned with a stack of folders thick enough to stop a bullet. My grandmother opened the first one. Adjusted her reading glasses. Began to read. And that's how we discovered that my father hadn't just stolen my settlement. He'd been stealing from the family for years. The audit files covered the dining room table like autopsy reports. Charles read them aloud, his voice getting shakier with every page. Shell companies. 12 of them. Registered in the Caymans, Panama, and Delaware. Total assets transferred out of Cabot funds over the past 8 years. He stopped. Cleared his throat. $8.7 million. My grandmother didn't blink. Continue. Unauthorized loans from the family trust. Real estate purchases in Florida, Colorado, and Switzerland. A yacht registered under a false name. And he turned a page. His face lost all remaining color. And a life insurance policy on Mr. Whitfield Cabot. Taken out 6 months ago. With an accelerated death benefit rider. The room went cold. Whit. My brother. The one who'd sat on the counter and stolen my failed croissants. The one who'd told me I was too good for this family. The one whose phone had gone straight to voicemail when I needed him most. A life insurance policy, my grandmother repeated. On my grandson. I didn't know about this, my father said quickly. This isn't, someone else must have. Your signature is on the application, Harrison. I didn't read the fine print. You took out a policy on your own son's life and you didn't read the fine print? I invest in things. That's my job. I sign documents all day long. My grandmother closed the folder. Set it down. Folded her hands on top of it. Where is Whit? What do you mean, where is he? He's in Switzerland. The chalet. He's been there since. Since when? My father stopped. A flicker of something crossed his face. Fear. Genuine, unpolished, animal fear. Since the accident, he said. What accident? There was an avalanche. A small one. He's fine. He's recovering. The doctors said. When? When what? When was the accident? My father didn't answer. Charles pulled out his phone. Tapped the screen. His expression shifted from professional detachment to something far worse. Mrs. Cabot, he said quietly. Mr. Whitfield Cabot was reported missing by Swiss authorities 6 days ago. The chalet was destroyed. A search and rescue operation is ongoing. My grandmother stood up. She walked to the window. Her back was perfectly straight. 6 days, she said. My grandson has been missing for 6 days, and no one told me. The family didn't want to worry you. The family. She turned around. Her voice could have frozen the Atlantic. You mean you? You didn't want me to know because you were hoping what, exactly? That he'd be found? That he'd be dead? That the insurance policy would pay out before anyone started asking questions? I would never hurt my own son. You stole from your daughter. You stole from the family. You took out a secret life insurance policy on your firstborn. And now he's missing in a country where you sent him. She took a step toward him. What exactly were you planning, Harrison? My father's composure shattered. I was going to fix it. His voice cracked. All of it. The investments. The missing money. The policy. I just needed more time. The market turned, and the loans came due, and I made some bad calls, but I was going to fix everything before anyone found out. By killing your son? I didn't try to kill Whit. I love Whit. The policy was just, it was a hedge. Everything's a hedge in this business. You don't understand. I understand perfectly. My grandmother's voice was ice. I understand that my son is a thief, a liar, and quite possibly a murderer. I understand that the family I spent my life building has been hollowed out from the inside by the person I trusted most. She looked at him the way you look at a stain on a rug. You are no longer my son. Mother. Charles. Call the authorities. Give them everything. The files. The signatures. The policy. All of it. You can't do this. My father lunged forward. I am a Cabot. This family protects its own. You stopped being a Cabot the moment you stole from your daughter. She pressed a button on the wall intercom. Security. Escort Mr. Cabot out of the building. He is not to return. Mother, please. 2 men in dark suits appeared. My father struggled. Shouted. Cursed. Called me names I'd never heard him use before. Then the doors closed, and he was gone. The silence that followed was enormous. I stood there, in my borrowed blouse, in my grandmother's sitting room, trying to process what had just happened. My father had stolen my settlement. Stolen millions from the family. Taken out an insurance policy on my brother. And Whit, who'd always believed in me, was missing in a country thousands of miles away. My grandmother turned to me. You'll stay here tonight. I have an apartment. You have a room upstairs with clean sheets and a door that locks. Your apartment has bars on the windows. Stay here. It wasn't a request. Fine, I said. One night. We'll discuss the rest in the morning. The rest? She walked toward the door. Paused. Looked back at me. The rest of your life, Margot. You've been gone 4 years. It's time to come back. She left before I could answer. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in my old bed, staring at the canopy, my mind spinning. Leo. The restaurant. The diner. My father's face when the security guards dragged him out. My brother's laugh, echoing from years ago. At 3 in the morning, I gave up. Went down to the kitchen. The kitchen had always been my favorite room in this house. Not because the family used it, the family never used it. Because the staff did. Because it was the only room where things actually happened. Where food got made and dishes got washed and people talked to each other like human beings instead of chess pieces. I opened the refrigerator. It was fully stocked. Vegetables. Cheese. Eggs. Fresh herbs. I hadn't seen a refrigerator this full since we closed the Hungry Idiots. I pulled out eggs, butter, chives. Found a bowl, a whisk, a pan. Turned on the stove. Cooking had always been my escape. When I was stressed, I made omelets. When I was sad, I made soup. When Leo died, I didn't cook for 3 months. Couldn't even look at a knife without wanting to throw it through a window. But tonight, my hands remembered. I whisked the eggs. Melted the butter. Chopped the chives with a knife that was sharper than anything in my Somerville apartment. The omelet came together perfectly, golden, fluffy, exactly the way Leo had taught me. I was sliding it onto a plate when I heard footsteps. My grandmother stood in the doorway. She was wearing a silk robe and no makeup. She looked, for the first time in my life, like an actual human being. "It's 3 in the morning," she said. I couldn't sleep. Clearly. She looked at the omelet. At the clean pan. At the chives I'd chopped into perfect, uniform pieces. "You still cook. It's not something you forget." She sat down at the kitchen island. Gestured at the stool across from her. I sat. "Tell me about the restaurant," she said. "The Hungry Idiots." "That's a terrible name." That's what I said. For the first time in my entire life, my grandmother almost smiled. "Tell me anyway." So I told her. About the tiny space in Queens. About painting the walls ourselves. About the first review that brought us a line around the block. About the Michelin star that showed up unannounced and changed everything. About the dish that made the critic cry, a risotto with wild mushrooms and truffle oil that Leo had spent 6 months perfecting. I told her about Leo. His laugh. His hands. The way he'd dance between the burners like the kitchen was a ballroom. The way he'd taste my food and tell me exactly what it needed, never too harsh, never too soft, always exactly right. I told her about the diagnosis. The hospital rooms. The machines. The day he told me to save the restaurant instead of him, and the day I told him I couldn't do either. I told her about the diner. May. The regulars who tipped in quarters. The old man with his split pea soup. When I finished, the omelet was cold. My grandmother hadn't moved. $400,000, she said quietly. That's what I authorized. If you'd received it, Leo would still be dead. Money doesn't cure cancer. But you wouldn't have lost the restaurant. No. I wouldn't have lost the restaurant. She was silent for a long moment. Your father will go to prison. The evidence is overwhelming. The insurance policy alone is enough for a fraud investigation, possibly attempted murder depending on what happened in Switzerland. And Wit? We've hired a private search team. The Swiss authorities are cooperating. We'll find him. She paused. He asked about you, you know. After you left. Every week. Has anyone heard from Margot? Is Margot okay? Can we call Margot? My eyes burned. I tried to call him. Right after Leo died. His phone went straight to voicemail. Your father had his number changed. Told Wit you wanted space. Told you Wit didn't want to talk. Her jaw tightened. He was isolating everyone. Keeping us apart so we couldn't compare notes. Couldn't figure out what he was doing. The money. And the rest. She stood up. Get some sleep. Tomorrow, we have work to do. What kind of work? She looked at me. And for the first time in my life, I saw something in my grandmother's eyes that wasn't coldness or calculation or disappointment. It was respect. "You're a chef," she said. "A good one, apparently. You ran a Michelin-starred restaurant before you were 25. You survived losing everything and you're still standing." She walked to the doorway. "The family needs a new direction. Something that isn't hedge funds and shell companies and men like your father." She paused. "I'm thinking a restaurant group. Several restaurants, actually. Different concepts. All under the Cabot name." I stared at her. "You want to go into the restaurant business?" "I want you to go into the restaurant business. I'll provide the capital. You'll provide the talent. You don't know anything about restaurants. I know how to make money. I know how to build brands. I know how to destroy people who get in my way." The almost smile returned. "The cooking part, I'll leave to you." She left. I sat in the kitchen, cold omelette in front of me, my brain refusing to process what had just happened. My grandmother, the woman who'd called cooking common and, beneath this family, wanted to build a restaurant empire. With me. 2 weeks later, Whit was found. He'd survived the avalanche by sheltering in a supply shed that had been buried under 15 feet of snow. He'd broken his leg in 2 ribs. He'd survived on melted snow and emergency rations. He was half delirious when the rescue team pulled him out. I flew to Switzerland the day he was stable enough for visitors. He was lying in a hospital bed in Geneva, his leg in a cast, his face bruised, his eyes lighting up when I walked through the door. "Margot. Hey, idiot. You came." "Of course I came." He reached for my hand. His grip was weak but warm. "Dad," he said. "They told me about Dad." "Not now." "Did you know? About the insurance policy?" "No. He tried to kill me. For money. He tried to profit from an accident." "It's different." I squeezed his hand. "I don't know if that helps." "It doesn't. Then we'll process it later. Right now, you're alive. That's what matters." He closed his eyes. "The chalet is gone. Everything in it. My laptop. My journals. My collection of stupid vintage snow globes. I'll buy you new snow globes. They won't be the same. I'll buy you better ones." A weak laugh. "I missed you. I missed you too. When I get out of here," he opened his eyes. "I want to work with you. Whatever you're doing next. I don't want anything to do with Dad's business. I want to be part of something real." I thought about my grandmother's offer. The restaurant group. The capital. The brand. "I might have something," I said. "But I should warn you, it involves grandmother. Grandmother is terrifying." "I know. She once made a senator cry." "I know. She's going to be insufferable to work with." "Definitely." He smiled through the bruises. "I'm in." 6 months later, the first Cabot restaurant opened in the North End. We called it simply Margot's. My grandmother hated the name. Wanted something more elegant. Something with Cabot in it. I told her we could put Cabot on the second one. The menu was small. Seasonal. Every dish had a story. The wild mushroom risotto that Leo had perfected was front and center. Underneath the description, in tiny print, it said, "For LM, who taught me that food is love." Whit ran the front of house. He'd recovered fully from the avalanche, though he walked with a slight limp that he claimed made him look distinguished. He charmed every guest who walked through the door. Remembered names, preferences, anniversaries. He was the best maitre d' in Boston within 3 months. My grandmother attended the opening. She wore diamonds and a navy dress and stood in the corner sipping champagne, her expression unreadable. Halfway through the night, the food critic from the Boston Globe approached her. "Mrs. Cabot," he said. What do you think of your granddaughter's restaurant? She took a very long sip of champagne. I think, she said, that it's about time this family produced something of value. High praise, from Evelyn Cabot. The review came out the next day. 4 stars. The headline read, "A new Cabot empire rises, and this one is delicious." 3 months after that, my father was sentenced. Fraud. Embezzlement. Multiple counts of financial crimes. The insurance policy investigation was still ongoing, but the evidence was damning. He'd be in prison for at least 15 years. I didn't attend the trial. Neither did Whit. My mother went, I heard. Sat in the back. Left before the verdict. My grandmother attended every single day. Front row. Watching her son face justice. When the guilty verdict came in, she didn't react. Just stood up and walked out. Did you feel anything? I asked her later. I felt that justice was served. That's not an emotion. It's an observation. Grandmother. She looked at me. I felt that I had failed. As a mother. As a guardian of this family. I gave Harrison everything and it turned him into a monster. That's not an observation. That's a feeling. Dad made his own choices. Yes. He did. But I gave him the keys to the kingdom and never checked what he was doing with them. She set down her tea. I won't make that mistake with you. Is that a threat? It's a promise. I'll be watching. Every decision. Every dish. Every dollar. The almost smile. Don't disappoint me. I'll try not to. You won't. She picked up her tea again. You're not your father. You never were. 1 year after the opening of Margot's, we expanded. 3 new restaurants. Different concepts. Different neighborhoods. Whit ran operations. I ran creative. My grandmother ran the numbers with an iron fist and a spreadsheet that made our accountant weep. We called the group Idiot Brothers Hospitality. My grandmother hated the name. The word idiot does not belong in a business name. It's a tribute to Leo, I said. The Hungry Idiots was his favorite name. She stared at me for a long moment. Fine, she said. But the next one is called something dignified. The next one, we named after her. Evelyn's. She pretended to hate it. She attended the opening in a gown that cost more than the restaurant's monthly operating budget. She stood in the corner, sipping champagne, the same unreadable expression on her face. But this time, I caught her smiling. Actually smiling. I saw that, I said. You saw nothing. I saw a smile. I was adjusting my lipstick. With your teeth? She gave me a look that had made senators apologize. But the smile stayed. That night, I walked home alone. Through the North End. Past the restaurants and the bakeries and the narrow streets that smelled like garlic and sea salt. I stopped in front of a tiny storefront. Closed. For lease sign in the window. It was the same building where Leo and I had talked about opening our first restaurant. Before New York. Before the Michelin star. Before everything. I pulled out my phone. Called my grandmother. There's a property I want to look at. At 11 at night? It's the one. I can feel it. A pause. I'll call the real estate agent in the morning. Thank you. That's what family does, Margot. We build things together. For the first time in my life, I believed her. 2 years later, I was standing in the kitchen of our 5th restaurant, expediting during a Friday night rush, when the hostess appeared at my elbow. Chef. There's someone here to see you. Tell them to wait. I'm buried. She says it's urgent. I looked up. May was standing at the kitchen door. May, from the diner. The woman who'd hired me when no one else would. The woman who'd handed me an apron and said, shift starts at 5. She was holding a newspaper. The business section. There was a photo of me, standing in front of Evelyn's, shaking hands with the mayor. "Look at you," she said. "All cleaned up." May. I wiped my hands on my apron. "What are you doing here?" "I came to collect." She held up the newspaper. "You owe me 4 months of coffee making. I figure I'll take it in dinner." I laughed. Sat her at the chef's table. Cooked her a 6-course meal myself. Halfway through the 3rd course, the wild mushroom risotto, she put down her fork. "This is the best thing I've ever eaten," she said. The recipe was my husband's. The one who died? The one who lived? He died, yes. But he lived first. And he taught me everything. I gestured at the kitchen. This is all him. Every dish. Every sauce. Every stupid name. The hungry idiots. You remember. Hard to forget a name like that. She took another bite. He'd be proud of you. I looked around the kitchen. The line cooks moving in perfect rhythm. The servers calling orders. The dining room full of people eating food that Leo had inspired. "Yeah," I said. "I think he would be." Later that night, I checked my phone. A text from my grandmother. Just one line. "The 2nd Michelin star arrived today. Don't let it go to your head. E." I smiled. Typed back. "Too late. Already planning the 3rd. Her response came immediately. "Good." I put down my phone and went back to the kitchen. There was risotto to stir. Sauce to taste. A restaurant to run. And somewhere, I knew, Leo was dancing between the burners, telling me to add more salt. Always more salt.